Hey, pilot, welcome back to Ready for Pushback. I'm Nik Fialka. You found it, the best aviation podcast. Today, I don't know. It's a great time to see you. It's a great time to talk with my friend Kenny Hyman. I got a message from a listener who said, hey, in episode 20, you interviewed Kenny Hyman. He had just interviewed with American Airlines, and I'd love to get an update. So this is it. I reached out to Kenny and I said, hey, man, let's talk. So this conversation is all about what 3 years in the airline is like. We talk about highs and lows. We talk about the differences between the regionals and the majors. We talk about the difference between the military and the majors and what that's like. We talk about unions. We talk about training, all sorts of good things. And I think this is a really good show. Hey, if you haven't this year, I would really appreciate it if you just hop over there to Apple Podcasts and write a review, 5 stars, 1 stars, whatever. But write that review. That is so helpful for people to find the show, and that's cool. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. That's what people do. I appreciate you so much. So let's do it. All right, sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback. It all started as a spark. Maybe it was the sound of jets racing across the sky, or the feeling of your heart racing as you watch a crop duster flying low and slow. Even then, you knew you were meant to fly. For pilots, it's more than just a job. It's a calling. The early mornings, the long hours, the relentless training, you didn't do it for the money. You did it for that moment. That moment when the wheels lift off and the earth falls away beneath you. But flying is just the beginning. The journey to your dream job takes more than just skill in the sky. It takes strategy on the ground and a lifetime of learning.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. Learn how to go from good to great, from flight school to regional to major, and from hopeful to hired. Whether you're sharpening your skills, building your resume, or preparing for that big interview, this is where pilots come to level up. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nik Fialka.
All right, Kenny Hyman's back with me again. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Man, I'm excellent. Any day flying's a good day.
Dude, I hear you. So we are back 3 years later having a conversation, and you have been an airline pilot.
I have been.
Well, how's it going?
Man, flying the Airbus at American has just been, it's been an amazing experience. You know, having transitioned from naval aviation to 121 was a really, really dope experience, especially because as military pilots, I really feel like we were abused pilots. There's a lot of experience, right? There's a lot of experiences in airlines, and people get mad about it. I'm like, we don't like that. We don't. We're mad about that. Okay, we're mad about that.
Give me an example.
Like, I don't know, when we were going through contract negotiation, and everybody was all fired up over it, and I'm like, I just don't understand what all the emotion's about, but I can pretend. So stuff like that, or reassignments. People get mad about reassignments, and I'm like, it's not like I've never been extended on the flight schedule before, or hey, you know what, I'm doing absolute minimum rest into the next day's flight schedule. So just stuff like that, and there's no knock on our non-military background brethren or sistren or otherin, but there's no knock on them. It's just an experience thing. Like, oh, we don't like that. Okay, I'll pretend I don't like that. So yeah, it has been an incredible experience.
Yeah, when you and I were speaking, it was you had just finished your interview. We were very excited about the future, and now your perception of what it was like versus when you started there. What was the experience?
So first off, the experience here it was even better than that initial interview jump off, and that whole initial jump off, and the greetings, and then going out to training and everything. It's just gotten better every time. Matter of fact, we just got a new chief pilot at DCA, and I had to stop down into the flight office yesterday because I decided it was a great idea to crush my EFB under the seat.
Oof.
Yeah, I'm not a small mammal. I'm like 270 pounds, and everybody's like, "Oh, go to the gym. Broad shoulders is great." So you sit on your EFB. But anyway, so I had to go down there and exchange it. And he just popped in and he was like, "Hey," yeah, I hadn't met him before, and he was like, "Hey, come to my office. Let's just chat." And it was just, he's got candy and he wants something to drink. I'm like, "No, I gotta go. I gotta go to the gym. I just landed. Don't offer me candy." But I mean, it's just been that experience. It's from interview, well, I guess really from post interview, but from post interview until now, it's just gotten better every day. Even the bad days are great.
What was training like? Because you, like the Airbus is you only influence the Airbus. You don't really fly the
Right,
Airbus.
right.
And it was AQP training, which you had never done before. What was it like?
So it was definitely different from military training. So I was fortunate. I flew to 175 before this, so that aircraft, I flew for 14 months. That aircraft transitioned well into the Airbus, but it was a mental transition from the fact that in naval aviation, and specifically in helos, we had to know everything about the aircraft. And I'll never forget something as simple as the NG limit on the H-60. You know what I'm saying? Right, 110 plus or minus two, and then the question
Oh
would be
yeah.
like, why? Well, where does the plus or minus two come from? Well, when the fuel rolls through the system in the barrel, all the stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with my ability to get the aircraft to the runway. Just all the little minutia. And so they've really shed that, and they're like, "Hey, listen, we need to focus on, we need the wave tops in terms of systems, et cetera, but we need to focus on being able to fly the aircraft and what makes the aircraft fly and how the aircraft's logic works, and so on and so forth." It was really, really laser focused on that, and that made it incredible. But the biggest thing is, and you having been a primary flight training instructor in the Navy, the difference of feeling of going and sitting down and getting ready for that brief was very different than it was very different was going through the initial. And you can still kind of go in with that game time mentality that you've always had from being a naval aviator or being a military aviator. And then when you sit down and the guy smiles at you, he's like, "Hey, what kind of questions you got?" I'm like, "I don't know. I read everything." And you're like, "Okay, all right."
You're the one
And
asking questions.
right, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And then, they ask a couple questions and you answer them. And they're giving you a weird look because you stop, right? Because they're giving you a weird look. You're like, "Did I do something wrong?" They're like, "No, I just didn't expect all that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. All right. Let me go stand at attention or something." I don't know. But that made the training really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The AQP training style is such that you learn the briefing items, but in the brief, the instructor does a lot of delivery and a lot of teaching, which I think is surprising because like in our military world, it was the student vomits all the information out and then the instructor throws darts at him. And that is not how the AQP world works. And so that was interesting, but also you have to know the things that you're going to do that day, whether it's just learning profiles and flows, whether it's learning maneuvers, whether it's upset training or what have you. Being 110% ready on those things makes your learning so much better.
And the biggest recipe for success is just carry the mentality you had in the military. If you just carry that mentality, you'll be above that standard. Like the last time I was at Recurrent, they were like, "Hey, do you know what N1 setting you need if you're at 10,000, if you're at whatever altitude and you need 250 knots?" And I was just like, "Oh yeah, you need like 50%." Right? And then they both just kind of like looked at me, and I was like, "I got daddy issues." I read the Simpsons manual. I get bored on flights.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
If you just keep that mentality going in, you'll be above the standard, and it just increases that level of success.
Yeah, and your preparation really pays off, and it's been a really, even if you weren't in the military, just deciding that you're in flight school mode this entire time, because it's easy to sit back and want to relax and not do anything,
Very easy.
and fall off that wagon just a little bit. I am interested in your experience becoming a first officer at that major. Like, what is the difference? Because you were at SkyWest before.
Mhm.
So how different is a regional from a major, and lay that out?
So culture is vastly different. And like I said, hey, I'm not going to sit here and bash SkyWest because my experience at SkyWest was also incredible. So I don't know how I went from like incredible to like extremely incredible. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so my experience there was absolutely incredible. The training, the mentality in training was very, very different. Um, the mentality at the regional in training was far more rigid. Yeah, it was far more rigid. They required us to know a lot more um, about the aircraft than say we did at the major, and I think that's by design. I think it's because the majority of the first officers that are coming into a regional, the majority of them have 1,500 hours in a Cessna or a Piper Warrior, with some other mixture of hours in other places, whereas the gross majority of first officers going into the majors have 3,000 hours of total time, 1,000 hours of PIC 120 in 121. So I think that the training is built for that, right? Okay, the training is really all training is built for the lowest common denominator, right? And I don't want to call a 21-year-old a low the lowest common denominator, but just in terms of experience, right? If we're comparing a 21-year-old who was a CFI, 22-year-old that was a CFI, and say somewhere between an 03 and an 05 that comes out of the military, the experience level is different. So the training associated with that at the regional, I think, is more rigid to be able to capture and train the younger professional. Whereas at the major, kind of the expectation is you come in with a certain amount of experience. You just don't need as rigid of a training. The efficacy, the self efficacy is there. So they can throttle back on the rigidity associated with the training. So that's kind of like that's what the big difference.
How about on the line, daily life?
That's a good question. So the biggest difference, I mean, the biggest difference is just the support that's available to you, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the regionals are even the wholly owned regionals, they're subsidiaries, right? Which means they have their own systems. They have their own systems, they have their own processes, and then there are things they rely on the major for. And coming from a military background, we're used to to groups and teams working together, right? At a bare minimum, the senior enlisted in the two separate departments talk to each other, and that makes like a seamless transition. But this is, what I'm saying, this is big business, and silo operations are a thing. So you talk to operations at, you're a regional captain, a regional first officer, and you talk to operations, and SkyWest's operations has then got to talk to, United's operations, or American's operations, or Delta's operations, and sometimes some things get lost. Sometimes some things get lost in translation due to that silo effect. And for us as operators, as pilots, it's just, hey, be patient. Try not to catch an attitude. Catching an attitude about things is not gonna make it better. It's gonna make it worse. And where, hey, you know what? You were the line division officer at some point in time, or you ran quality assurance, or you're the maintenance officer, or you were the operations officer in the military. And if things weren't working on the line, you could walk right inside and get everything solved. Not the case. So we just have to learn to work through it through soft skills.
I think that my experience coming from a regional to a major is similar to what you said about the fact of the matter is At the regional, you probably have between, I don't know, I want to say maybe 2,000 to 6,000 pilots
Oh
at that
yeah.
regional. And the employees, total employees at a regional is probably on the realm of 10,000 to 15,000 people, maybe. That's kind of a guess. But a major has between 70 and 100,000 employees and somewhere between 12 and 20,000 pilots. And that is a big difference. When you are at a regional, like you are literally like earning your chops because there's a structure, there's a loose structure in place, but boy, they give you a lot of rope to hang yourself with. And like your decision making is key in a lot of situations, like de-ice stuff or non-towered airports or things like that. And then at a major, it's a lot more it's a lot more big city. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So something as simple as something as simple as flying Denver to Montrose or Denver to Durango. I mean, maybe you could get the bus into Durango, maybe, but when you go into Montrose, you go into yeah, you go into Durango in Colorado. I mean, it's literally the Wild Wild West,
Mm-hmm.
and getting into those little airports, not somewhere you could put a bus and or a bigger aircraft for that matter, and then you don't have the same support. You
Mm-hmm.
know, something as simple as having to get your clearance, and you taxi to the end of the runway and get all the approach to get your clearance, and the mountains are in the way, let me pull my phone out and give them a call, and you're not supposed to have your phone on the flight deck, but in that particular moment, you know what I'm saying, you're authorized to turn it on because you got to make that phone call. So,
Captain's authority.
right, things that I generally don't have to do in the Airbus, that I do have to do, did have to do in the 175 at a regional.
And I found that the support when I call when I have an issue, whether it's a maintenance thing, like especially a maintenance thing, a lot of times as a captain at a regional airline, you can feel a little bit of pressure to make things happen,
Yeah.
and you can feel like, do I need to write this up? Do I not? And at the major, it just is like, yeah, just put it in the book. No, just write it up. They'll take care of it. Oh, it's contract maintenance. They'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And you just do that. Or you want more gas at a regional. Oftentimes they're very strict on gas, and you can get some pushback from your dispatcher on how much gas do you really want, how much do you need. And for me, if I want more gas, I give a call. I'm like, hey Mike, can I just I need 3,500 pounds. He's like, yeah, you got it. New release is on the way. And that it just goes, and it's quick, and it's pressureless, I guess.
Definitely a lot less pressure. Um, yeah, definitely a lot less pressure. I mean, there's more money at a major, and that
Yep.
also, the costs are different. So the costs that regionals deal with are different than the costs that the majors deal with, and that's going to affect things like MELs. Eh, how many CRJs? How many CRJs have a locked out APU?
Yeah.
you know, and there's less locked out APUs on the 175s and the 170s. They're newer aircraft, but there's don't get me wrong. I definitely get into a bus with a locked out APU, and I'm just like, but it happens a whole lot less on the bus than say it did at the regional. And like I said, it didn't happen a lot on the 175, but all of my CRJ, what I'm saying, brethren and sister, and they ran into locked out APUs at least twice a day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a challenge, and it's definitely a challenge for the captains out there.
How about the hotels? Any change?
Um, a little bit. So like landing in Detroit, at the regional, we go to the hotel immediately off the airport. And I mean, it wasn't bad. It was a good hotel, but the airports, the airport hotels that the majors use, often are different hotels. So the hotel we go to in Detroit, like the short stay hotel we go to in Detroit is better than the one I was at when I was at the regional.
Yeah, I've noticed that if you have there's a short stay hotel and a long stay hotel. And at the regional, we just had the hotel. And the long stay hotel, I think, is over. It depends on the contract, but
Right.
it's over some period of time, like 11, 12 hours, whatever. A lot of times those are in the middle of a city, and they're pretty nice hotels. Like some of these hotels are real swanky, and like not the kind where a poor kid from North Carolina is used to stay in. Yeah, you too, Bo. I know. um,
Look, I just stayed in Marina Del Rey out in LA. And look, the hotel I stayed at when I was at SkyWest, I mean, I thought I was going to need to be armed, at that one. So, it's like I walk in, I'm like, what is this? The 1950s? Like,
I
so yeah, little kid from the projects. Like, what am I
yeah,
doing in Marina Del Rey?
yeah. Every time I'm in someplace nice, I think, man, like this is way better than the Hojo.
Yeah,
So, um,
right. And I thought that, and I thought that was, I thought that there was bourgeoisie back in the day.
yeah, anything with a pool was amazing. The Yeah, I think that all in all, getting to the major financially, it's a massive upgrade. Quality of life is a massive upgrade. I do find that we're flying a lot. We're flying. It's probably because I'm a pretty junior captain that I'm getting a lot of legs, a lot of shorter overnights, but also room to grow. So that's good. Here's an interesting thing. I have had a few fatigue calls, and I had a couple at the regional, and I had a couple here. And here it was like, okay, cool, sounds good. Let me know when you're ready, and fill out this form, and you'll get paid. At the regional, uh, it was a lot of self pressure that you put on yourself, and like good chance you're not going to get paid for it if you call in fatigued, and that was tricky, and so it made you less likely to want to call in fatigued, I think, and so that's been interesting.
The majors, I don't want to say it's encouraged, but it's pretty clear. If you can't fly, don't fly.
Yeah.
If you can't fly, don't fly. Whatever your feelings are on it, when you do it, that's fine. But if you can't fly, don't fly. And I agree. It was not the case at the regional. And again, I'm not bashing SkyWest. It's just the culture, And I and
Mhm.
I and I don't know how much of that culture is like self imposed. You know, I mean, you say, hey, fatigue, and you feel bad about it, and then you project that onto the airline. Um, but I can't say that they also went out of their way what I'm saying, to like get, to help you, to assuage that feeling. Whereas at the major, they really go out of their way to assuage the feeling. And I'll say, like I said, I popped into I talked to the chief pilot yesterday, and I was like, hey, I just want to put it on your radar. I'm talking to the doc about having to have surgery. I work out a lot. You got a lot of injuries. It's about that time. And he was just like, yeah, hey, look, however much time, boom, just if you need any help, here's who you talk to. I've had a bunch of surgeries, so don't worry about it. Don't come back to flying until you're ready to fly. And it was like 6% of the conversation was, hey, I got to have surgery, and then the other 94% was the coaching associated with it, especially relative to the company, and reach out to the union and everything. It was just it's just a very, very different feel. And like I said, it's no hit on the regional. Like I said, my experience at SkyWest was absolutely incredible. It's just a different culture.
It's a different culture, and they have different ground rules based on the contract,
Right.
and which is great at a major because there's amazing insurance, like long-term disability insurance and short-term, that can really help pay you, and so that you can go and get the things you need and recover for it. At a regional, I mean, it depends on which regional, but some of them they can just cut you loose if you go out sick for too long, and then you're without a job, and that's scary. So not everything, not everyone, and not for every reason, but there certainly is that aspect out there. So
So I just got back from Honolulu. United,
Humble brag.
by the way, Hawaii is the Mississippi of the Pacific. Unpopular opinion. Mississippi, oddly enough, is not the Hawaii of the South.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I like that.
But in any case, so I went out there and I caught a ride on United on the way out. And by the way, awesome, being able to list for the jump seat on another airline. 'Cause, pilots all look out for each other. So I was able to jump seat out there, and there was another pilot on the air. He was a United pilot on the aircraft. He was Guam based, as a matter of fact. So it was cool to like trade stories with him. And I'm like, oh, okay, you on HF all day, every day, twice on Sundays. Bold, but I barely like being in the clouds, but but in any case, so being able to trade stories with him, but he was out on long-term disability, and his medical experience was a bit troubling, and he was dealing with the negative emotions associated with that. But he was like, the one benefit about this is how the airline backs me up in this thing, right? And so he's out on long-term disability, and the long-term disability is covering everything he needs, and it's like, I'm like, so what are you doing in the meantime? He's like, I travel. He's like, I'm going to be out for about a year. The long-term disability covers me, and he's like, it's been really great for my mental health. And I just like, right, exactly. Like if you're if you're going to be out because you're dealing with something medically, and you're doing the adult thing, you're doing the adult thing of dealing with it. The fact that you have this thing in place to what I'm saying, to help you financially, and the fact that the team who you work hard for is going out of their way to make you feel comfortable, like, where you want me to fly, I'll fly wherever you want me to as soon as I can work again. So that's a huge benefit.
It's the beauty of, I guarantee some people listening to this, like, that's why there's a contract in the union. And they're like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why, like, the contract is such an important thing. And also a chief pilot, a management that will see it, understand it, and embrace and understand that they represent the company. However, their job is to support the pilots as well. And that's where the win is.
Yeah, and I think I got to put a plug in for the union. I don't think I've said the union enough. The fact that there's a grouping of pilots and professionals who I can call, and the only reason they're there is to be able to help me with the answers. The company is there to do what the company does, but the union is there for us as pilots, and that was a very, very new experience for me. Very, very new experience, and it has been an extraordinary experience.
I got a message the other day from a listener who was on a trip at a major and having a really hard time with the captain they were flying with. And it was to the point where the guy, like, he was really upset. And so I encouraged him. I actually reached out to that company. It wasn't my company. It was another company's union. And I got the number for their professional standards. And I said, hey, here's the phone number. Call them and have a conversation. It is a safe place. It's a good opportunity for you to just sort out your issue with this person and succeed. And he did it, which was super cool. And the union helped kind of repair that relationship to where the end of the flight was good. And that's no other business has that kind of thing. So thank goodness for the union, and thank goodness for the things they do. I'll take my dues, man. Let's go.
Absolutely. Thumbs up to pro standards. I've flown with between SkyWest and between American. I've flown with one dud. One. And I don't know, maybe everybody's like, oh, flying with Kenny's like flying with a dud too, but whatever, what I'm saying? Right. Let me not gas myself up, but I've flown with one dud, and I think that's beautiful, right? It's like you go through a 20 year or more career in the military, right? You're going to get a front office once. That's not that great. Same thing, what I'm saying? So I went through SkyWest, never flew with a dud, and I've only flown with one at American. I mean, that those are great odds, but that was the one time that I had to call pro standards.
Oh, you did call?
Yeah, and and I just had to I just had to, I kind of had to like check myself in the brain and be like, I know, Kenny, you're the guy that'll punch people at 30,000 feet. That's great. Just, you know what I'm saying? Just keep it professional, you know what I'm saying? And he, unfortunately, I don't know what the captain was going through. There was something going on.
Mm-hmm.
When I showed up at the aircraft, he was screaming into the phone. So I just had to kind of depersonalize and be like, that's not me. That's just what he's feeling right now. And, he just refused. He refused to do the checklist and stuff like that. He was against new procedures. You know what I'm saying? So whatever
Weird.
he was going through, so we did Charlotte to Denver, and I kind of won when we got to Denver. Because we were, for those out there that go to Denver, we're going from the east side to the gates, and you have to taxi. I think it's Echo Delta to, you know what I'm saying, to the gates, and it's uphill. So he's like, hey, let's shut down an engine. I'm like, it's up. I'm like, it's uphill, and he's like, this isn't an E175, this is an Airbus, and I'm like, you know what, no
way
problem.
More underpowered,
right? You know what I'm saying? Boop. So heats out number 2, and not 2 minutes later, ground calls, and they're like, what are you doing? The line is backed all the way up, and I'm like, I'm like, oh yeah, we're let's see if we can speed this up. And I like look at him, you know what I'm saying? Like, go ahead and start number 2. Okay, all right. So yeah, so I won in the end. But that was the one time I called pro standards, and it was because when we got to the gate, it was just really uncomfortable flight. So we got to the gate, like we didn't speak to each other. We got to the hotel, we didn't speak to each other. And so I called pro standards, and I was like, and when you call pro standards, don't get diarrhea of the mouth and just bash the individual. Mm-hmm. Lead with empathy, communicate, hey, there are things I probably could have done better. I may have contributed to this. What could I have done better? Because pro standards is not only there to help that individual, but they're also there to help coach you, and what you could have done better in that particular situation. So yeah, I don't get on the phone with pro standards. That was the one time I did it. And I think it was one of the best decisions, and I'm glad we got pro standards.
I'm glad you did too. And I think I've spoken about the time where I had it called on me once, and it was so good. I was so frustrated at myself, but also I learned so much, and I'm just waiting for the next kid to call. Man, I am so proud of you. You're doing all the things. You grew up, you're like everybody wants to be you, and you're amazing, Kenny. So thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for updating us on 3 years of flying in the majors, and what a treat. I'm so glad you're one of my friends.
Nik, I'm really really happy you asked me to come back on. It's an absolute honor, and it's even more of an honor to be able to talk to again, all my brother and sister, and around the system flying and those coming along.
All right, pilots, that's a wrap on this episode, and I know what you're thinking. You need to make yourself a little bit better. So how do you make yourself a little bit better? You tighten up your resume. So here's what I want you to do. Go over to my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and you can download my free resume template. It is tight, organized, and it's the perfect pilot resume. It's just something I like to do for the pilot group, and it is free to you. So go over there, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and download your free resume template. While you're over there, look at all the services that we offer. Lots of great interview prep, lots of great application review. Everything you need to be a professional pilot is right there. spitfireelite.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.